So before we start and I introduce our speaker presenter this morning, short video, if I may. We do that every time we start a webinar, so hold on, and then I'll introduce our guest speaker. Well, once again, welcome everybody. As Melody was mentioning, my name is Christin Ateng. I'm the manager of the New Brunswick Employer Support Services. Brief information for everybody's benefit. Our program is a program being funded by the federal and provincial government. The mandate is to promote the hiring of persons with disability throughout the province of New Brunswick with New Brunswick employers. We offer free services to employers in terms of recruitment, consultation, and training as well. And we work in collaboration with many agencies throughout the province. We call it EES agencies, specialized with persons with disabilities. So our job is to change the employee's mindset about the whole concept of hiring. And then it's up to the agencies to do their magic. You know, we have professional organizations throughout the province that does a tremendous, incredible work directly with persons with disability. And they're the ones that does the magic with the employers who wants we change the employee's mindset. So, having said that, this is about what I wanted to talk about NBESS. Let's talk today about our webinar, Working with Challenging Clients. We have today the honor and privilege of having with us Mr. Dan Keeting from the YMCA in Fredericton. He's an employment counselor working under the Work Services Support Program. Talk to me a little bit about yourself and your program you're working with in Fredericton.
Sure. Well, currently I'm working with the YMCA's Work Services Support Program, as you said, within the Department of Global and Community Development. I've been working in this position now for going on 7 years, and our work involves providing employment support services, skills building, and so on to clients referred to us from either social development, post-secondary education, training and labor, public safety, or Corrections Services Canada.
Right on. So you've been around for, in this field. And once again, we thank you very much for contributing to today's webinar. So let's talk about the subjects that you want to cover this morning, working with challenging clients. And I'm going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to give you the floor so that you can cover what you want, touch bases a little bit about what you want to cover today. Go ahead.
Certainly, thank you. Welcome to everybody who's joining the webinar this morning. My guess is that for most of us, we have had the opportunity at some point in time in our working careers to find ourselves working with challenging clients. And the term challenging clients could take any number of forms, really. The slide here is kind of identifying a few of those perspectives. Clients who are maybe resistant in some way to coaching or even receiving some help. Clients who may not even want to be there for whatever reason. The criminal record always comes up as a really big barrier and challenge with working with clients with this kind of situation. clients suffering with anxiety or who are argumentative or non-committal. There could be any number of different kinds of challenges that we encounter with the people we're working with. And so learning to work with those challenges is not just a necessity, but it's a real benefit to our clients as well.
Right on. So we're going to jump right deep into it, though. So once again, I'm going to let you go deep into the subject matter this morning. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So the next series of slides is going to be touching on a number of the different kinds of issues in terms of working with our challenging clients. And so, feel free to ask questions along the way. I'm sure we're open to that. And this particular slide is just kind of starting at the beginning. In a sense, it's really important for us to be aware of our own reactions to challenging situations, and literally to be able to kind of ask ourselves in the moment, or even prior to working with a client who may present themselves as challenging to one degree or another, what are we actually experiencing when we're working with the client ourselves? Are we experiencing frustration? Are we experiencing anger, fear, a sense of not knowing where to go or what to do or what might happen? Do we sometimes even find ourselves falling into the trap of arguing back with a client who may be resistant or somewhat argumentative? Do we also maybe trying to get a handle on the situation? Do we find ourselves trying to push the agenda in terms of making the client or encouraging the client to do what we think is best, and so thereby kind of gaining some kind of control of the situation in that way? These are common kind of areas that we can fall into and that we need to be aware of as we're working with challenging clients. It's not easy, but it really is important. Yeah,
right on. I hear you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And of course, initially, just to get back to the basics, initially, it's really important for us to get to know who our client is. It's a good idea to spend a little time just to create a kind of supportive relationship with the client, especially if they are coming in with certain barriers or they're feeling intimidated themselves or unsure of how to react to a counseling kind of situation. So it's important to kind of create a supportive environment with the client and get to know them as a person, really. And then we can, from there, we can more easily get into talking about what their particular needs are, what do they want, and what sort of barriers are they facing. They will more easily be able to identify and talk about those kinds of barriers if we establish a friendly, supportive environment first. It's really important to develop a sense of at ease, so to speak, with the client. And that can take, a couple of different meetings, before we actually get into trying to develop some sort of a realistic plan, which is, of course, eventually the goal we want to move toward. Something that the client can be comfortable with, something that they can agree to, something that makes sense to them, is logical, has a step-by-step kind of approach, is needs fulfilling to the client, meets their needs, is something that makes sense to them. Obviously, and eventually our plan wants to help move the client closer to employment. Maybe that moving closer to the employment would require some skills building or training, education, but developing a plan that makes sense to the client, that the client is comfortable with, that's really an important step.
Dan, if I may, though, I think we should not, and what I get from this, though, what you just said, though, I guess we should not minimize the importance of building that relationship with your clients and get to know your clients. And as you said, maybe it could take 1, 2, maybe 3 meetings with the client before establishing that, right? We should not minimize that aspect.
No, not at all. I've often said to people I work with, sometimes in training sessions and so on and so forth, that really without the relationship piece solidly, and the client feels comfortable with us as service providers, if we don't have that relationship some level of comfortability in place, it's very, very difficult to do anything meaningful with our clients.
I get that. All right, next one.
This slide here is talking about something that I've referred to here as holding your seat. And by that, what I really am referring to is, especially in challenging situations, it's important to hold our sense of professionalism, if I can put it that way. That it's very important for us to remain calm and focused and client-centered. It's really important to be able to get a really good sense of what's going on within us, within our own thinking, how we're feeling. And so this is all, to me, is part of holding our seat and being present in the situation, not reacting to what might be, perceived as a kind of a challenging situation. The client may be presenting in ways that we find difficult to relate to, or we don't understand, or we may find that it's even a little bit abrasive or something like that, or just not wanting to be on the same page with us right now. But it's really important that we kind of hold our seat, hold our professionalism, remain calm and focused, and listen. It's really important to listen, and especially important to listen when the client may be saying something that we find uncomfortable, that puts us out of our comfort zone. And in situations like that, it's even more important to hold our seat. And additionally, too, listening can help the client, as it says in the bottom item on the slide, can really help the client to kind of sort things out, too. I've been in situations where a client may be presenting themselves in a kind of a challenging way that's difficult actually for me to relate to or listen to. But if I can remain calm and hold my seat and actually ask the client to tell me more about what they're saying or what they're thinking, then that really can help a client to sort things out in their own minds as to whether or not, is this really the way they see things, or is it just a kind of a reaction they might be having to
Interesting. So I guess basically what you're saying, though, the importance of keeping our, I don't know if I'm using the proper term, but composure in
Yes.
a situation with a client, right?
Yes, composure. Yes, that's a good way of looking at it. Composure, professionalism, not reacting, not kind of losing your calm and focus. The title of the slide is called Working with Challenging Clients, Keeping Your Cool in Trying Situations.
There you go. All right, so next ones. I like, this is
Yes.
really interesting. When I read the slides, so Dan, when I look at this one, though, I thought it was quite interesting because, I wondered for myself, from my perspective, because I don't work directly with clients, I work with employers. So for me, when I look at this slide, it's like, okay, where do you draw the line? So I leave that up to you to explain a little bit about, this particular slide.
Okay, yes, establishing our boundaries, knowing what our limitations are. And again, this is it requires a degree of, if I can put it, mindfulness and self-awareness.
Okay.
In terms of what we're comfortable with. What do we feel that we can address in a real, genuine, professional manner, knowing where our boundaries are, knowing what our limitations are. For example, I may have a client who's presenting to me in such a way that I think they could benefit from the services of another organization.
Right.
Let's just say, for example, we have somebody who's seems, in my mind, to be presenting in a way, demonstrating some mental health issues, let's say, just for example.
Right.
And so it's important for me, if I see that, and if I get a sense that this is what the client may be showing me, then it's important for me to be able to say in a supportive environment, to say, I'm really hearing what you're saying here. I'm not so sure that I have the the tools and the expertise to help you address this situation, but I can point you in the right direction. I can point you toward another service provider, an agency who may be able to help with the things that you're talking about and telling me about right now. So those are really, important things to be able to establish those boundaries and to stay within your limitations. Otherwise, we run the risk of getting ourselves into uncharted territory where we don't necessarily have the expertise. It's understandable that we may want to go there with the client because we want to be helpful, we want to be supportive, we want to engage the client and to give them a sense that we're hearing them and willing to work with them. But again, if it's uncharted territory that we're not comfortable with or don't have the expertise with, we are in a little bit of, not dangerous, but a little bit of deeper water maybe than we ought to be in. So you're doing the client a much bigger favor by saying, look, I'll continue to work with you in terms of skills building and job searching and so on, but the things you're telling me about right now, I think I can refer you to another agency that can help you with that more than I could.
This is so important, Dan, when you say that, because, I understand that everybody who works, in a relationship in helping someone, everybody wants to do good, and nobody wants to do something, a half-decent job. Everybody wants to step up to the plate and save everybody and so on. But sometimes it's really important to draw the line. It's like, okay, let's not go there. It's not, I'm not going to help the individual. But it's a being self-aware of that situation is half of taking care of the problem, in the sense that, as long as you are self-aware of that, not to go in a field or in a place where you should not be going because you don't have the expertise or whatsoever is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that, actually,
No, it's more than a good thing. It's actually, it's a necessary thing that we want to be able to be helpful to the client, and so referring them to an agency or a helping source that knows a whole lot more about the situation being presented than I do is actually working with that client in the most helpful way we can. I would much rather be doing that than to be questioning myself later on after the client has left and our encounter is over, saying to myself,
oh, Dan, we have a technical difficulty. We just lost you for a few seconds, but that's okay. You're back on track. We lost you for a while.
Here we go. Okay, we're back. Okay. So yeah, it's really important. It's really important to know those limitations, and that's the most helpful thing we can do often with our clients. We don't want to question our own competency after the fact. That's not very helpful to them or to us. So it's kind of related to the last 2 points, knowing when enough is enough, in a sense. I may at some point have to say to a client, well, I think we've gone about as far as we can with this right now. Let's take this up later on, or I will refer you to someone who can help you with this situation you're talking to me about. And so knowing when that boundary has been reached and enough is enough, and knowing that when to actually disengage with the client at that time.
What do you mean by disengage from the client, though, Dan, please? Because, I'm a francophone and sometimes, I'm having difficulty, but what do you mean by disengage from the client?
Well, sometimes it's important, again, related to working with challenging clients, we need the client to be able to meet us halfway, so to speak. If I'm doing, it's no good for me to be doing the work for the client. I need to encourage the client to do that work for themselves, and I can support that effort and help them and support them along the way, building skills, job searching, whatever it might happen to be. But if the client is telling me over a period of time that they're actually not willing to kind of engage with the plan that we've put out or moving forward, then at some point, it becomes necessary to bring that to a focus and say, are we able to work together here toward these common goals, or is that not actually going to be happening right now? And if it's not going to be happening right now, then we need to be able to disengage and just say, well, maybe now is not the right time for you. Maybe if there are other things that need to be looked after right now, or you're feeling that this is just not the right time for you right now. We could disengage for now, come back later on when you're feeling a little bit more ready, and we'll pick it up from there. So, you know, we don't want to be forcing the situation. We want to be working collaboratively together. And sometimes, you know, it's better to disengage than to kind of force a situation that's not really going anywhere.
Knowing where to draw the line, if I may call it this way.
Yeah, knowing where to draw the line. Knowing where to draw the line.
Right on.
You know,
okay.
we work with people, we do with, not for.
Exactly. I like the way you said it, though. It's music to my ears, and that's the way it should be. Yeah.
Okay.
So the next slide, it's about the you're going on hold clients accountable, as you mentioned early on. That's not negotiable because we have to establish that from the get-go, right?
Right. Yeah. It's related to the slide in terms of developing a plan that is realistic and is client-driven, that the client can agree to, that the client can own and call their own. And it's important then to hold the client accountable to that agreed upon plan. And when I say hold the client accountable, I don't mean in an aggressive kind of way, but just to say to the client, so how are things going? The last couple of times we met, we had agreed upon these different things that you would sort of move forward with. It might be resume writing, it might be researching the various occupations, it might be setting up appointment times to go and talk to employers. It could be any number of different things. And if the client is coming back and I ask them, so how did that go? How did it go when you were, you know, making contacts with employers and getting some information about the occupation or training you'd like to pursue? How did that go? And if the client is saying, well, you know, I really haven't done very much with that just yet. So holding the client accountable.
Oh, you just froze for a few seconds, Dan. You're gonna hold on. We just lost you. I guess the weather is affecting everybody right now, even technology. Okay, you're back, Dan.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay. Are we still here?
Yeah, we're still on. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Okay. So holding the client accountable often just takes the form of asking questions, you know, can you tell me what it was, how come that didn't work? You know, we had thought we would do these particular tasks over the last week or so, and that just didn't work out. So can you tell me why what happened? Why didn't that happen? So that's what we mean by holding the client accountable. It's not like wagging your finger. It's more like asking questions to say, okay, well, what happened, and and there may be some very legitimate kind of barriers and obstacles there too. Maybe the client doesn't have the skills to follow through, that we weren't aware of that before. Maybe they're just feeling a little bit tentative about doing something different that they had never done before. And so that's really valuable information. And now we can work on things to help them move forward with the plan that we had agreed on.
Okay.
So that's really important. It's taking the form of offering feedback and what can we do that would make it helpful to move forward and so on. And it might be, I've seen sometimes clients will say to me, you know, I'm just really uncomfortable. I'm just really uncomfortable with this. I know it's something that makes sense to do in terms of building skills and putting together a plan for my job searching and finding employment, but I just find this is really uncomfortable, and that's completely okay. I would much rather hear a client say to me, I'm really, really uncomfortable with this. I'd rather hear that than to hear, well, you know, I just didn't get around to it.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's true. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. So helping to develop that sense of awareness and acceptance, you know, of where the client is at, what their situation is. Now we have something to work with if I'm really hearing the real story in terms of why the client was not able to move forward with their together. And so, you know, again, it comes back to making sure that the plan we do put together with a challenging client is realistic, is within their comfort zone, is something that they can actually move forward with, and then being able to address any barriers and obstacles that might come up along the way. And, you know, for the most part, a lot of times barriers and obstacles will come up, especially if clients are not used to kind of putting together a plan that we've agreed upon.
Agreed. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So the last two items are a little bit of an offshoot here, relating behavior to what would be acceptable in the workplace, or having a right to refuse service to an offensive or abusive client. This is more really, I'll probably change this to another slide, but this is more related to knowing what your boundaries and limitations are, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Often the example I use here would be something like different forms of, say, a sense of humor, or what the client believes is just having fun or joking around, you know, within the context of a supportive relationship. But being able to, you know, relate particular behaviors or what you're observing.
Funny for me may not be funny for somebody else. And that's why sometimes, you know, when you have different people with different sense of humor. We lost you, Dan, so you're back on, Dan. So we lost you for a few seconds.
That's okay. We're on to the next slide here now.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. I'm just waiting for that to clear up there. No. So just kind of moving forward and kind of elaborating a bit on the last few items and we've been talking about, that it's really important with clients who are not particularly engaging, it's really important to ask questions, ask lots of the slides, lots of thought-provoking and probing to really get to the heart of the matter. You know, what are the barriers that you're encountering? What are the issues that you're having trouble with? Let's identify those, and let's see if we can work on some of these things in order to help you know, move forward. That can be very, very helpful to clients. Those last four items actually come from a poster that I have on my wall here in working with clients. Just to say, you know, very simply, how is your job search going anyway? How are things going? What are you doing well? What do you need help with? And what's holding you back? That last question can So that last item, in terms of what's holding you back in terms of your job searching, and that can be a very helpful piece of information. And something.
I guess, Dan, if I may, though, those last four questions that you have on this slide, though, it says everything about, you know, asking questions to your clients. You know, like sometimes we may have the tendency, and it's human nature sometimes, to come to the conclusion that, but we don't know exactly. So there's nothing wrong asking those questions, specific questions, you know, like, and we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Right. Something that I preach, but I don't usually do myself, but we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And when we work, you know, in this particular field, though, asking questions and paying attention to the answers sometimes goes a long way, right?
Right. It's really important. And again, it's related to the notion that we want the client to take ownership of their own path forward. So if I'm jumping in and trying to determine what that path forward is, then it's not their path anymore. It's my path. So we need to be able to engage the client with those kinds of questions and get them to really be thinking about, you know, what are you doing well? That's a good place to start. Right? Where do you need help? What do you need, and how can we move forward, and what's actually holding you back? That can be really, really helpful and necessary information to know. This slide here, just kind of relating back to knowing our boundaries and limitations and holding our seat. that sometimes it is really difficult to be present with the client, say, who presents with different kinds of emotions. It could be sadness, it could be fear, it could be different degrees or levels of anger or frustration. Difficult to be present with clients who are demonstrating some kind of.
Once again, we just lost you. You're back. We have we have technical difficulty, Dan, but you're back. You were talking about the importance of keeping distance.
Being present with an emotional client, but sometimes being present is really the best thing we can do, and not saying much of anything. Sometimes all we need to do is listen. Sometimes we just need to be present with the client, and that can be very helpful. I've just sat and listened to a client talk to me about how they feel, about their emotional state, how they're feeling very anxious or very frightened even of the present situation. I've had clients even break down in tears, just talking about how they're feeling about their situation, and all I'm doing is just listening, and just giving that client a supportive environment in which in which they can express themselves. But again, I want to relate this to knowing your boundaries and limitations as well. If we're not comfortable with that kind of thing, then we need to know that within ourselves in order to be helpful to the situation. So again, it's knowing your own personal boundaries is really important, especially in these kinds of situations. But clients can be very appreciative of the fact that all we're doing is sitting there letting them feel and express their feeling. That can be very, very helpful to a client, and usually we don't really have to do much of anything except just to listen. And I do want to stress, though, it's important to resist the urge to be physically comfortable. That's probably not a to reach out and touch somebody on the hand or the shoulder and say, it's okay, I hear you. And to avoid statements of, even though we want to be helpful, avoid statements like, yeah, it's okay, I know how you feel, because really in reality, we probably don't actually know how they feel. We want to express our empathy, but it can be a little dicey if we get into that realm with a client. I've had the experience before of a client saying, you know what, you really don't know anything about how I feel. So we don't want to get into that kind of territory.
Yeah, I guess that's the last.
Present.
Go ahead.
Just being present in the situation, I think, it can be sometimes the most helpful thing you can do.
But it's as well, though, it's quite challenging for the employment counselor working with the client, because it's normal nature. When you see somebody who is in distress or whatsoever, try to comfort them, like by putting your hand on someone's shoulder. It's almost like human nature. But when you're in a working relationship with someone, I understand that there is a limit and there's a line, you have to draw it. And that's the tricky part. I would have challenges by doing that, though, myself, because but that's why I don't work directly with persons with disability looking for employment, because I would have some challenges here. I know myself.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things where we need to be very cognizant and very present and aware of the situation, and know where those limits and boundaries really, professionally, we need to be able to know where those limits and boundaries are, and it's just safer not to be.
Well, once again, we lost you, Dan, but you're back now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the weather must be wreaking havoc with our connection here somewhere.
Oh, exactly. That's what I was going to say again. Exactly. So we have 2 more slides, Dan, and I'm going to let you run through those last 2 slides, and then we'll entertain questions at the end. So before the technology breaks down again.
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. Wonderful. So of course, ultimately, really what this is all about in terms of our work as employment counselors or support workers in whatever capacity we find ourselves, we're looking, it's all about client success and client-driven success. We cannot change anyone, but we can encourage change. And the best way to encourage change is to encourage our clientele to become aware of for themselves what their strengths and their abilities are, as long as what their challenges and deficits might be, and then help the client to move forward to address situations that can be helpful for them in terms of moving forward. The old adage that says you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink. And it's very important. It's very important to know the distinction there. It's very important to be able to lead the horse, so to speak, to water, or to point them to the door, to show them the door. But it's really important that we do not force the situation. The client has to actually move forward on their own. They have to open that door for themselves. So working, and this is mentioned before, working with the clients, not doing for the client. For example, I've had many times people say to me, well, isn't your job, you're supposed to go out and help me and find a job for me? I said, well, no, that's actually not my job. My job and my role is to teach you, support you in developing the skills that will benefit you in terms of not only finding work and training for yourself right now, but down the road and in the future. My role is to support your learning and your development. I would be doing you a disservice to actually try to go out and find you a job. For one thing, I don't know what it is you want to do. So, that's what we mean by client-driven success. Our role is to offer, coaching, teaching, support, and guidance, and to, assist the client in moving forward on their own.
And I guess along the way, though, the most important aspect, if I may call it this way, Dan, is to guide, but let, how should I say that in proper words? So it's like we can, as you said early on, you can bring a horse to water, but you can. What's the expression again you used early on?
You cannot make them drink. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink.
And we challenge this clients sometimes. It may be challenging, but it's like you need to take the time, and through dialogue and through asking questions and I guess all along taking the time and making sure that they take the ownership of their venture or their what they want to do. That's the most important aspect. But the last slide, though, you covered in things that are quite interesting and that sum up what you talked about during your presentation. Go ahead.
Right, yes, and ultimately, in the end, of course, we want to see our client move forward with a plan that makes sense to them, that's logical, and moves them forward toward training or ultimately toward needs fulfilling employment. So our best reward is when the client no longer requires our service. So one of the best phone calls I get from my clients sometimes is to say, I'm not going to be coming to our next appointment time. I found a job and I'm starting on Monday.
That's what all we want to hear, right?
Exactly. It's like, great. That's wonderful. Best news I've heard all day.
No, but it's true. So, you're so right when you say that. That's the biggest reward that we can get. When somebody calls us and say, you know what, I don't need you anymore. I'm okay. Perfect.
Yeah, and generally, it's nice when that's followed by a thank you, but no, it's great. So, really our goal is to, follow forward. It's so great to hear clients call up and say that, I'm feeling really good about this job that I'm going into now. I'm feeling prepared. Moving forward is great. Thanks. And at the same time, too, I often like to remain available and supportive to clients, especially if there have been some challenges along the way in terms of working together, just in case things are kind of, needing a little bit of support in the new job environment. So it's nice for me to be able to remain available and supportive. In fact, the work that we do requires that we do keep that level of support going for several months after a client does find work, just in case things come up that we can help.
But at the same time, Dan, if I may, we just lost you again. The technology is playing tricks on us. We just lost you. But Dan, yeah, we just lost you. You're back on the screen now. But if I may, though, with what you said about we remain available and supportive, this must be something tricky as well, because, you know, to a certain extent, you cannot impose yourself on a client. And it's a matter of finding the way to gauge properly, you know, like how far can I go, or should I reach out, or, you know, like you need to know your clients really well, though, in that particular aspect.
Yes, no, that's very true. And usually in a situation like that, the key thing here is to remain available, not imposing, available. So often what I will do is I'll say to the client, is it okay with you if I'm in touch with you every month or so over the next several months, just to ask how things are going? Would that be okay with you? And then whatever the client says, I'm going to be fine with that. They may say, no, really, I'm good. Thanks for the help. I'm moving forward now. I've got my job. I really don't need the support anymore. But good to know you're there if I do. And other clients say, yeah, sure, that'll be fine. Yeah, no problem at all. So taking our lead from the client in that respect is what we need to do. But it's just remaining there, kind of in the background should things kind of go south a little bit, and being available to help out if need be.
Dan,
and in the end, of course, you
go ahead.
Want to. In the end, of course, it really is all about celebrating our clients' success, and you know, as they're moving forward and accomplishing their goals, and it's just so rewarding to see clients. People we work with accomplishing various goals, you know, step by step along the way, and maybe you know, for the first time saying, gee, you know, I really didn't know that I could do this moving forward like this. And so, I mean, that's our best thing we can do, is to help that client achieve those successes.
You know, Dan, you know, this is the last slide of your presentation, and one of the things that I captured through your presentation is, like, you know, it's as employment counselor, you know, a lot of time, you know, we talk about employment counselor as caregivers, people who wants to change the world, the people that really wants to make a difference and so on. But at the same time, you know, it's so important to know where to draw the line, especially with challenging clients. So in terms of, it could be in terms of behavior or whatsoever, and it's really a matter of finding the right, I may call it this way, balance, you know, on the approach, on how to do things, and making sure that you engage your clients. You know, it's not your plan, it's their plan, and they have to take the ownership of it down the road, regardless if they are challenging clients or not, and know where to draw the line in terms of behavior, in terms of, you know, like whatever that is not acceptable. There's nothing wrong to call a client and say, you know what, no, this is not acceptable from my perspective. You don't talk to me like that, you know, or be able to, but at the same time, build that relationship with your clients. So important.
Yeah, very true. And you know, the word that came to mind as you were speaking, Christian, was empowering. We're actually empowering our clients to be the best that they can be within, not only within a working environment, but within their own. You know, our work is just part of our lives. You know, the bigger picture is actually our life. Our career is more than just our job. It's who we are. It's how we present ourselves to the world. It's how we perceive ourselves in the world. It's our level of awareness, self-awareness and mindfulness, and all of these kinds of things make up who we are as individuals. Part of it, and in a big way, how we actually express ourselves in a work environment, for example.
Right.
So, you know, finding the balance, it's a good word in the sense, because there are many things to balance out in terms of, often referred to as the work-life balance.
Right.
So empowering clients to be able to get a sense of where all those moving parts are and how to bring them all into balance. And if we can help the client do that, again, we're really empowering their moving forward.
Listen, Dan, I hear you talking, and it's like, go ahead.
I was going to say that might be beyond the actual kind of quote unquote boundaries of employment counseling. But really, to my mind, employment counseling is more than just finding a job. Employment counseling is working with the whole person in terms of training and education and job acquisition and skills building and so on and so forth. And really it is all about kind of discovering that work-life life balance, and especially important, I think, with different levels of, challenging clients.
And I hear you talking that, and it's like music to my ears. I think I'm kind of glad that I recorded this webinar, because I'm gonna listen to you many times in the future. It's just to remind me, where, because it is challenging. And when as I said early on, when you work in a relationship in the field that you're in a relationship with someone trying to help someone, it is so challenging, to navigate and draw those lines. And it's, as I said, music to my ears from my end. Listen, Dan, if I may, I'm going to ask the participant if they have any questions to use the chat to ask questions. And if there's some, I know that people are really shy to ask questions usually during webinars. And maybe because of the storm, they will be even more shy. I don't know, but please, if there's any questions, use the chat, and we'll be more than pleased to ask Dan to answer your questions that you may have. From my end, down here, Dan, I'm wondering though, your organization early on, you said, you work with different type of individuals with different type of challenges that they're dealing with and so on. But you have no experience in working specifically with person with disability. Your organization do not work with person with disability. Did I get it right?
Yeah, we're working with people who have challenges and barriers, more related to kind of life issues, as it were. It could be long periods of unemployment. It could be lack of education. It could be barriers like needing to develop certain skills, not knowing how to job search, how to actually find a job, or someone with a criminal record, and so on. But if I run into a situation where somebody who has what I believe to be, say, a physical or a real physical or mental disability, I can work with them to a degree, but if I really feel that they would be of benefit to someone else who really specializes in those particular areas, then it makes a lot of sense for me to refer them to that agency, and maybe we can work with them together. It could be that somebody who's more can provide support for somebody with physical disability is working with them in that area, and then I can be working with them in the job searching side of things, and so we can actually kind of share that client, as it were, each of us, within our own realm of expertise.
Great. Okay, I hear you. But my point was that your approach and the way you present this, though, regardless if you work with a person who has a disability or not, I guess the approach and the approach and the steps you refer to in terms of how you build your relationship and so on applies in the same way. No
Yes.
matter, that's the whole point. I have two comments from a participant, Dan, no questions, but Ernestine from Fredericton says, thank you, Dan, for your presentation. We have an individual from the Dexter Center in Grand Falls. They said, no question here. Thank you very much for this presentation. We had a good conversation between us here at the Dexter Center. I mean, this presentation provoked good conversation, and I like to hear that. So for them, it provoked a good conversation internally. I think it's pretty good. That's the whole intent of doing those webinars, is to provide perspective and information to our organization and so on. So that I do have a question somewhere, Dan. Hold on. Okay, Angela saying that it's a great presentation, lots of good information. Her name is Angela. I don't know where she's from. But Dan, you're a rock star. I think that people appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
On that note, I say thank you very, very much, Dan, for being such a good sport this morning. And I know that you had to shovel your driveway this morning just to be at the office for this webinar. So thank you very much for your time. For everybody's benefits, as I said, this webinar is being recorded. We will be sending the link of the webinar to each participant, and as well, excuse me, we'll be sending Mr. Keating's coordinates as well. If you have any questions that you would like to reach out to Dan, Dan informed us that he would be more than willing to answer any questions, concerns that you may have about his presentation. Dan, do you have a final note? I give you the final word of this presentation this morning.
Sure. No, I just want to thank you and everyone who was participating for the opportunity to share my PowerPoint presentation and to offer a few thoughts in terms of working with challenging people. I'm sure some of the folks out there who may be listening, maybe not, but I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to talk about this really important topic, and just to wish everybody the very best in the very good work that you do.
All right. Well.